Deep in Ecuador's Amazon rainforest stands the Coca-Codo-Sinclair Dam, a $3.2 billion megadream that was supposed to power the nation for generations. Instead, it has turned into a global symbol of China's tofu drag exports. Engineers have found more than 17,000 cracks crawling through its concrete. A dam that should last 50 years may not even survive 20. And this is no accident. It's the same story repeated from Asia to Africa. Beijing funds flashy mega projects, cuts corners with cheap construction, and leaves behind a trail of dangerous infrastructure and crushing debt. What looks like development often becomes nothing more than a debt trap dressed up as generosity. Now, in Ecuador, history repeats itself. Power China, formerly Sino-Hydro, a state-backed giant under Xi Jinping's government, has swooped back in with a $400 million deal to fix the very mess it created. On paper, it's framed as compensation. In reality, it tightens Beijing's grip on Ecuador's most important source of energy. Because with China, one thing never changes. Nothing comes free, and every crack in the dam reveals an even deeper crack in the promise of win-win cooperation. Decades earlier, local engineers envisioned a modest plan to harness the Coca River. That vision transformed under President Rafael Correa, who turned to Beijing for funding. With 85% of the financing coming through oil-backed loans from China, Sino-Hydro was awarded the contract and the design ballooned into a colossal 1,500 megawatt plant, the biggest hydroelectric facility in Ecuador's history. The promises sounded dazzling: energy independence, cleaner power, and thousands of jobs. But the budget quickly spiraled from less than $1 billion to over $3.2 billion. When the dam finally opened with fireworks and speeches, reality hit hard. Instead of producing the projected 8,800 gigawatt hours of electricity annually, it barely managed around 6,500. And despite its massive turbines, the plant almost never ran at full output. By the end of 2024, as blackouts stretched to 14 hours a day across Ecuador, Coca-Codo-Sinclair was functioning at only a third of its intended capacity. Now, with forecasts of severe drought, the danger of even more power shortages looms. The ground beneath the dam is unstable, and the cracks are multiplying. El Mercurio reports that since operations began in 2016, 1,761 structural fractures have been documented. But the problem started long before opening day. In 2015, Ecuador Times revealed that engineers had already flagged 7,648 defects in the water distributors. Quick fixes with sloppy welds hid the flaws but never solved them. By 2018, a report from Ecuador's Controller's Office, cited by the Los Angeles Times, harshly criticized Sino-Hydro for using cheap, substandard materials and dangerous construction methods. Inspectors even warned that parts of the dam might need to be demolished and rebuilt. Former Energy Minister Fernando Santos later admitted what many suspected: Chinese-funded projects were overpriced, poorly executed, and most glaringly, the $2.8 billion Coca-Codo-Sinclair Dam was the worst of them all. Its location only deepened the crisis. Research by Sebastian Naranjo Silva and Juliana Romero Barromeo pointed out the dam was built right beside the active Reventador volcano, in a region extremely prone to erosion. Within just 3 years, the Coca River chewed away 13 kilometers of land upstream, inching dangerously close to the dam's water intake. Then came the disaster of 2020. Infobay reported how a giant sinkhole swallowed San Rafael Falls, the tallest waterfall in Ecuador, erasing a natural wonder overnight. The collapse unleashed a wave of sediment racing downstream. In only a few years, nearly 500 million tons of mud and rock have surged through the river system, destroying farmland, tearing apart oil pipelines, and wrecking ecosystems across the Amazon basin. Communities lost clean water, fisheries vanished, and tourism crashed. Meanwhile, the erosion continues to creep closer to Coca-Codo-Sinclair. And the costs are not just environmental. The financial burden is crushing. Most of the dam's funding came from China's Export-Import Bank, which lent Ecuador $1.7 billion, but at punishing terms. The loan carried 7% interest for 15 years, far higher than rates available from the World Bank or Inter-American Development Bank. That means Ecuador must pay about $125 million annually in interest before even touching the principal. For a nation already buried in debt, the deal turned into a financial straitjacket, locking Ecuador's energy future into China's grip. Ecuador's biggest dam project didn't just drown in technical problems, it was also tainted by corruption. A Reuters probe revealed a web of bribery worth tens of millions tied directly to Coca-Cola Sinclair. Prosecutors even linked former President Lenin Moreno, who governed from 2017 to 2021, to alleged payoffs connected with dam contracts. In total, 36 people stand accused, with investigators estimating as much as $76 million in bribes exchanged between 2009 and 2018. But money was never China's gift. It always came with strings. And in Ecuador's case, those strings were barrels of oil. As the Los Angeles Times uncovered, ex-President Rafael Correa struck deals that forced Ecuador to sell millions of barrels of crude to Beijing on Beijing's terms. By 2024, Ecuador had already promised away 90% of all its exportable crude to China, tying the nation's lifeblood resource directly to debt repayment. And even that wasn't enough. Burdened by debt, Ecuador slashed public jobs and social programs just to keep its head above water. By 2019, frustration boiled over. Ecuador took Sinohydro, now rebranded as Power China, to international arbitration in Paris, demanding accountability for the cracks, failures, and environmental wreckage at Coca-Cola Sinclair. By 2025, the government was asking for around $400 million in damages. The arbitration zeroed in on three issues: shoddy construction, who should pay for repairs, and the soaring costs that crippled the project. Then geopolitics replaced the courtroom. On June 27, 2025, President Daniel Noboa met Xi Jinping in Beijing. Xi hailed Ecuador's entry into the Belt and Road Initiative and bragged about a new free trade agreement covering energy, mining, and infrastructure. Just weeks later, arbitration was abandoned. Ecuador and Power China cut a deal. The outcome stunned many. Power China pledged $400 million for operations, maintenance, renewable energy, and storage projects, while also taking over management of the dam itself. Officially, it was framed as support, but critics saw it as a trade-off that cemented China's control over Ecuador's most important energy project. The Andrés Bello Foundation noted it provided short-term relief, but deepened Ecuador's long-term dependence on Beijing. Ecuadorian leaders tried to calm public fears. Non-energy minister Inés Manzano insisted to Dialogue Earth that the agreement was neither privatization nor a sell-off, just a temporary arrangement to keep the system running. Chinese state media quickly defended the project as safe and long-lasting, while blasting foreign outlets like the New York Times for biased reporting that ignored China's side of the story. But experts in Ecuador see the danger differently. In 2025, researchers Sebastián Naranjo Silva and Juliana Romero Borromeo issued a sobering warning. Unless erosion and sedimentation are brought under control, Coca-Cola Sinclair may collapse well before its promised lifespan. Working with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, they outlined three urgent fixes. The first is dredging, removing more than 250,000 cubic meters of sediment clogging the river. Cost, about $2.4 million. The second is massive, building reinforced structures to stop erosion from chewing closer to the dam. This would cost $63 million, but it's the most effective safeguard for the river system. The third is technological, modernizing the sediment traps with sensors, auto-cleaning systems, and small dredges, at a cost of just over $2 million. All told, these solutions add up to around $71 million, pocket change compared to the $3.2 billion the country already spent. And with the dam losing Ecuador $3.4 million in domestic revenue, or $4.5 million when importing Colombian power, every day it sits idle, the fixes could pay for themselves in just 3 weeks. The authors stress that these measures are realistic, affordable, and could even create jobs while easing social unrest tied to blackouts. But they warn strongly against radical fixes like ripping out turbines or rebuilding tunnels, moves that would void legal claims against Sinohydro and bury Ecuador under even more costs. Their verdict is clear. Coca-Cola Sinclair can still be saved, but the clock is ticking. If Ecuador doesn't act now, the country's most ambitious hydro project could crumble long before reaching half of its intended lifespan. The Coca-Cola Sinclair Dam in Ecuador isn't an isolated disaster. It's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. Under its Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing has financed more than 300 hydropower projects worldwide. On paper, they look like glittering symbols of development. In reality, they often bring suffocating debt, shoddy construction, and broken promises. Warning signs appear worldwide. In Pakistan, the Nilam Jhelum plant was shut down after dangerous cracks tore through its tunnels. In Uganda, the Asimba Dam had over 500 defects, while the Karuma project was plagued by cracks, faulty wiring, and fire risks. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, Chinese-built dams triggered landslides, collapsing roads and causing deadly rockfalls. In Nepal, the $216 million Pokhara airport, financed by China's Exim Bank, became a white elephant, inflated in cost and nearly unused. And in Thailand, when an earthquake hit in 2025, the National Audit Office collapsed, one of the only buildings to fall, and it too had a Chinese partner. Taken together, these cases tell a chilling story. Projects once hailed as miracles of progress now stand as monuments to debt and danger. But the Belt and Road was never just about dams and airports. It's about power. Beijing uses loans and infrastructure as levers of influence, often demanding repayment in the form of oil, minerals, or other strategic assets. And this story repeats across the globe, from Pakistan to Uganda, Nepal to Bosnia. What was once sold as win-win cooperation now looks more like China wins, others lose. Ecuador's settlement may inspire more nations to demand accountability, but the bigger question looms. Will countries dare to push back against Beijing's Tofu Dreg projects? Or will they stay trapped in deals that erode sovereignty and leave behind infrastructure that may not even survive a quake, a storm, or the test of time?
Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We will keep reporting on the COVID surge in China, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to get the latest videos. And thank you for tuning in.